Welcome to On the Right Side of History with Kansans for Life. Come with us as we connect the pro-life movement's past to present, uncover hidden or forgotten history, and its connections to the battle still raging today. Now, here's our host, Danielle Underwood.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Underwood. We are glad you've joined us as we launch Season 3 of the podcast. Today, KFL Executive Director Peter Northcutt and I welcome Ambassador for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback, to the show. Welcome, Ambassador.
It's a pleasure to join you. I love KFL and what you guys do and have done over the years and what you continue to do. And Peter Northcutt and I got to work a lot together during some campaigns and in the governor's office. He's a fabulous man, does wonderful work, and so I'm glad to be able to join you.
Just a quick explanation of your background for those who maybe are new to Kansas or Ambassador Brownback. He was a U.S. Congressman for Kansas Congressional District 2, U.S. Senator for 15 years, and 46th Governor of the state of Kansas. And most recently, he served as Ambassador for the Trump administration for International Religious Freedom. Did I miss anything important?
Well, yeah, I've got 5 kids and 11 grandchildren. That's the big one.
Very important. Yes. Yeah, and other notable roles too. And you continue to work with coalitions around the world to protect the right to religious freedom.
I do a lot of work on that. And it's just one of the glaring holes in the human rights movement globally is the protection of religious freedom. And I say glaring because it's in the UN Charter of Human Rights. But on top of that, it's so foundational and fundamental that countries, when they get it wrong, the rest of the human rights don't do well. When they get it right, the rest of them tend to flourish. So it's just this cornerstone human right that certainly on the conservative side, we're pushing very aggressively to have it grow. And we find really religious groups are often the only group in a country willing or capable of standing up to a government. And if you can guarantee their freedom, there'll be more freedom broadly in that nation.
And we're pre-recording this interview today, and you're getting ready to embark on one of your trips tomorrow.
Headed to Tokyo. We're doing an International Religious Freedom Summit Asia in Tokyo. We did one last year in Taiwan. It was very successful. The Taiwanese have been great about building into this as really a statement and a juxtapositioning to China. They're saying, look, our system applauds and works with religious freedom and religious diversity. The Chinese see religious freedom as an existential threat, the Chinese Communist Party. This is just a diametrically different view of the world and how we operate. And it was a very successful meeting in Taiwan, and we hope to have a similar one in Japan.
That's very exciting. Well, we hope to hear a lot more about that after your trip, and we'll certainly have to have you back on afterwards. So, Peter, why don't you tell us a little bit about your time working for Governor Brownback?
Sure. And so, Governor, I'm having to keep correcting myself. It's very, it's not usual for me to call you ambassador. The usual titles were governor or boss over the years. So, but again, grateful to have you on. And like I've told many people in public and private, Governor, you're one of the nicest people that you will meet amongst people working in public service, and it's even the same outside of public service. You're just a down-to-earth, good person, the same as you are in person, in the public eye and as behind the scenes. And it's something that I know many of us that have had the opportunity to work for you over the years have always carried forward into our careers moving forward. So quite the legacy that you have left, not only your body of work but having influenced so many people moving forward. And the life issue, I had an opportunity to work for you as a legislative liaison for 2 years in the first 2 years of your first administration. And while there was always a number of issues that we were working on at that time, the life issue, of course, was first and foremost to your heart. I mean, you wake up pro-life in the morning just as you would when you're going to bed at night. And I was always struck by your faith and why the life issue was always just so core to everything you're doing. You're wanting to build families. you're wanting to move the state forward in a positive light. And of course, a part of that is we had to have the right to life and the respect for human beings, which was really a centerpiece for your really your agenda moving forward. So I hope at some point we'll be able to have you back on for another podcast. There's so many different places we could go with your career and how it relates to the life issue. And I'll tease out a little bit that I think one of the biggest untold stories in the pro-life movement now is your role in helping to get Samuel Alito on the U.S. Supreme Court, which that there are many notable areas in your career, but the role you played in the appointment to the bench and the impact that it's going to have on our country, it's already had on our country, but for the impact it's going to have for the years to come, just really, really is profound. I don't want to spoil our thunder. We're going to get there, but I think that's something that's an untold story that I think more people, both in Kansas and outside of Kansas, really need to hear.
Yeah, that's a cool story. We're looking forward to hearing that. Yeah. But to start back a little bit earlier in your career, so you entered national politics when you were elected to Congress in the 1994 Republican Revolution, which was led by Newt Gingrich and featured the contract with America. And that election gained Republicans 8 seats in the Senate and 54 in the House, including yours. So take us back. What was that time like where the Republican Party was surging forward, and what was the feeling of that time?
It was fantastic. This was the first Republican Congress in over 40 years. The Republicans had not controlled the House of Representatives in over 40 years. As a matter of fact, we had to do practice sessions on how to run the floor because nobody had ever run the floor before. We didn't know how to do it. There was one guy that had been in the Congress as a Republican prior when the Republicans ran the U.S. Congress, but he had been a page at the time. He wasn't a member. It was so long ago.
Wow.
And so we weren't depending on a guy that had just been a page in the Congress to be able to tell us. But we had to contract with America. We were all, in essence, really kind of political children of Ronald Reagan. Reagan's elected, at first run in 76, elected in 80, but he doesn't have a House that's behind him at all. And we've come into, and Newt Gingrich had engineered this, and we started moving things through, and it was a lot of fun because you've just got all this pent up energy and focus on things to do, on dealing with the deficit, which we balanced the budget in that period of time. In dealing with welfare, we did welfare reform that hadn't been done in 30 years or ever, really. We did farm program reform. We did just a whole swath of things, and there was huge energy, and it was really helpful for the country because these are things that needed to be done. And then you started to see the opening up of the pro-life issue on a national basis. We'd talked about it for a long time, but had never passed anything. And we finally got partial birth abortion through and got it past the president, got overturned by the courts. But that was a huge breakthrough in the pro-life movement because it finally got an issue in front of the public of here is a child that if you let live, will be a living child here outside of the womb, but we kill it. And that swung public opinion 10 points, that big debate on partial birth abortion. It was really our first big national win.
Yeah, and tell us about your allies in that fight. Who were you working with in that, and what were the keys to really delivering that message to the American people?
Well, I've got to give a lot of props to the Catholic Church in the United States, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. These guys, after John Paul had taken such a clear, strong stance, St. John Paul had taken such a clear, strong stance on life, they grabbed it. and the pro-life movement. We had an annual March for Life that you all been to, I've been to many times, dominated by the Catholic Church, organized and backed by it. And they just kept hanging in there just for, nearly 50 years before Roe gets overturned, and they hung in there. And they were hanging in there on this movement as well. Now, there was a lot of groups, National Right to Life, a number of other groups that were doing great things. It was broadly supported within the Christian community in the United States. And we could everybody could see and feel saying, this just isn't right that we would kill our children. I mean, it just didn't take a lot of discussion for people to look at it and say, this just isn't right.
And Ambassador, I know, so you were elected to Congress in 1992. The partial birth abortion law was eventually signed by President George W. Bush, I think in 2005. So it was a decades-long fight going through the Clinton years through the first Bush administration. Can you describe a little bit about the battle there? And didn't Bill Clinton actually veto the partial birth abortion legislation at one point in time?
He did. And I remember, Peter, praying a lot about this because I was thinking, this is such a clear case. And in the abortion fight in the United States, the pro-abortion community tries to talk about abortion mostly from the very early stages of a pregnancy, just saying, okay, when we had the embryonic stem cell debate, okay, the embryo is the size of a pencil head. How could this be seen as a person? We've always want to talk about abortion at the late term to show, look, this child, if you let it live, will live. I mean, this is a fully developed child. So each tries to position this. Partial birth abortion was obviously one where this is a late term abortion. And we just kept hammering it. I remember praying about it as I started to say, and just asking the Lord, why isn't this passing? This is just so obviously a child. And the thought that really hit me was the debate itself, going up, back, going to President Clinton, getting vetoed, back, was the educational piece to the American public. You got to change hearts and minds before you can change laws. And Lincoln used to say, we move by establishing a common thought. This established the common thought that this really is a child, no matter really kind of where you are on the abortion debate. You just can't deny this one. And that 10 years of debate back and forth was really a key part of talking to the American public and convincing them that this is a child.
I remember seeing, I don't remember which senator it was. Maybe it was Rick Santorum or someone who brought up very scientific diagrams of that procedure itself to make it very clear. Okay.
Senator Bob Smith out of New Hampshire.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
And let me tell you, when he did that, there was catcalls on the Senate floor. There were people in our own caucus saying this is inappropriate. People were really pushing hard back against him because of the graphic nature of the diagrams. Now, they weren't pictures, they were just diagrams. But, I mean, they show the child being partially born and sharp object, sutures or something stabbed in the back of the neck of the child. He took a lot of heat for doing that. And yet that's actually a key point. In any social movement that's been successful globally in the last 100 years, you got to show people. They got to see it. It's not enough to talk about it. It's got to be in their face and see it. That's what they did with the anti-slavery debate with Wilberforce. He took people to slave ships and had them smell how much they stink. He took shackles into hearing rooms to show them this is what men or women are put in. They gotta see it. And Bob Smith and Rick Santorum was key on that too, made them see it.
Powerful stories. So when you ran for Senate in 1996 and you won, the life issue played an important part in your campaign. And I'm just wondering, what message do you feel resonated with the people as you were on the campaign trail?
By then, I'd gone through a cancer episode in 1995 that really sanctified it made my faith real to me. It made me say, Lord, this is yours, whatever you want. And it just clarified and gave me a boldness. So I started that 96 race way behind. I'm in my own polling, I think I'm down over 25 points with a short race and a short runway to go. But, I'd been through the cancer episode, and I really felt the Lord wanted me in the race. And if I'm to win, great. If I'm to lose, fine. So there's just this kind of holy boldness that goes with that kind of attitude where you just kind of, this is what I believe. So I spoke with great clarity about the life issue. I also, I was running against the appointed Senator Sheila Fromm, who was a moderate and pro-choice, and a fine lady, but just, I think, really wrong on this topic. I would just go directly at her. And the other thing that was beautiful about it was I then had a lot of social conservatives and moms with babies at my campaign rallies and events. And, I'm running politics. Politics needs a lot of money. I'm looking around to look and see where are the money guys that are going to finance this campaign. And I remember at my announcement kickoff, there was one guy, and he was kind of standing behind a pole there at the state capitol that was a money guy. And I thought, okay, there's one. But everybody else was kind of moms and babies and people that were staunch conservatives. But, I'm just kind of going, okay, this is who we're going to fight this battle. This is going to be our troops, be our people. And then when you win a race like that, and you win it on people that care passionately about a social issue, the old saying applies, you dance with the lady what brung you. This is the one that stood behind me. I'm there with you. I believe in this. And it let me have a lot of freedom and a chance to, you do what you say you were going to do in the campaign, and you just hit it hard. And that's what I did. It was very liberating, really.
I can imagine.
Well, so Governor, this leads me into I kind of primed the pump on this a little bit earlier on the confirmation of Samuel Alito. And again, we're going really quickly through a career that we could spend a lot of time on. There's so many chapters we could go through, but from your congressional career to your role in the U.S. Senate, and you're talking about this boldness, your cancer journey, and you just having the conviction of standing for life, and the people that that helped elect you to office. It was one of the reasons why was because your staunch pro-life position. And so, as I remember it, with the confirmation battle for Samuel Alito, if I remember incorrectly, please tell me so. But I remember it was around 2005 or probably 2006, somewhere in that area. It was in the second Bush term, if I remember, and President George W. Bush, an incumbent who had won re-election. There was a vacancy or a couple vacancies on the Supreme Court. And at the time, President Bush was going to appoint his chief counsel, Harriet Miers, to the bench. And just kind of the physics of how politics work generally, if the head of your party or an executive makes an appointment, that's usually the default position. It's expected that members of the party are going to support their nominee by and large. But I believe you were the first voice that publicly came out and talked about concerns with the appointment of Harriet Miers to the bench. And ultimately, after a period of time, after a number of senators, a coalition was built. That appointment was removed, and then days later, Samuel Alito was nominated to the bench. Is that am I recording this correctly of the events that happened?
You are, and it was really a remarkable chapter, and it's been divine guidance through this whole thing that's gotten Roe overturned. From really even the final Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying in office at the precise time that you could get a staunch pro-life person through before the election cycle. Well, this one was no different than that. Harriet Miers gets appointed by George W. Bush. He's general counsel for the president. She's a top flight commercial lawyer in Dallas area, good personal friend of the president, isn't a constitutional scholar. There was people not so committed to the life issue that were concerned about her just constitutional bona fides. And I met with her, but on top of that, we were just sick and tired of having Supreme Court nominees put in front of us that kind of wink, wink, nod, nod, yeah, I really am a conservative, and then turns out that they weren't, a la David Souter. And there were others that you're just kind of going, no, look, we're not playing that game again. This is too critical. Roe v. Wade is horrible law. That alone, bad life issue, but it's not in the Constitution, and not anywhere near in the Constitution. So we were getting another one of these wink, wink, nod, nod. No, she's going to be all right. I meet with her. I'm not impressed with her constitutional knowledge. And then I'm really concerned. Here's another David Souter. And so and there was other conservatives that were talking to me that I respected that were saying, look, this lady's not going to play well when the lights go on in the hearing. And I started saying, no, I'm not doing it. And I was on the Judiciary Committee. That's what really gave the heft to it, because they had to have all the Republican votes on the Judiciary Committee. And so it ended up being one of the, I think one of the greatest things I was involved in that 14-year run I had in the Senate. I'm a big fan of Justice Alito's. I think he stood firm. He's not been a guy that starts conservative and starts then moving liberal. And my role in getting him on the bench and keeping Harriet Miers off of the bench, I think was one of the most pivotal things I was a part of while I was in the United States Senate. He has been this rock star on life. He and Clarence Thomas, both of them get just brutalized by the left in every way they possibly can. But they are right on the law, and they're right morally as well. But it's not just life. It's also been the religious freedom topic that they have helped broadly define the free exercise clause so that people of traditional values can practice their faith, be in the public square, and not get run out of it in this society. And it's been just a critical issue for this nation, and particularly for people of faith in this country to be able to have some breathing room on that free exercise clause, that if you want to hold to traditional moral values that because of religious beliefs, you have a constitutional right to do that, and that's being much more broadly defined, and you're being allowed to practice that. It's one of the reasons we started the National Council for Religious Freedom, is to fight for religious freedom here domestically and not just internationally.
Well, Ambassador, if I could, I was kind of coming back to this with the confirmation of Samuel Alito. You think about that. I mean, you've touched on he's had such a profound impact on the life issue, authoring the Dobbs opinion that others joined in, and of course he was a part of upholding the partial birth abortion law and several other key laws since that helped lay that groundwork. if you look at the overturn of Roe and what that took, how many years, and you mentioned all the different people of faith, people working in the public space to help bring about the overturn, that 5 decades long battle. Very few people, I think, could point to a single moment a singular moment where they helped overturn Roe. But you, in that one moment in the U.S. Senate, standing up and opposing your party's nominee, I mean, you have a direct line, because if that would not have happened, I don't think that Harriet Miers would have penned the Dobbs decision.
No,
and
she would not. I'm not even sure she would have voted with us on it. I hope she would have, but I don't know that she would have. You remember, Peter, the systems press people to move left. The social environment presses people to move left. The media presses people to move left. That's where the cool people are. That's where you get invited to nice parties. And on the other side, you get pariah status in the Washington Post and New York Times and all the media. It's a lonely space, and to stay there, and to not only stay there, to stand boldly and write a Dobbs decision when your house is going to be picketed, you're going to be threatened, death threats, you and your family, and they're going to publicize where you live. That didn't happen to people on the left. That didn't happen on the progressive side. And that's why we really need to uphold them in their prayers, that they can remain strong. Even the American Bar Association, I'm just so disappointed they're not standing up for these justices to be able to operate as justices and not be just pillared in public. They need to be defending their right to be free-standing judicial agents.
Mm-hmm. And Ambassador, so coming back to that confirmation process, like you're saying, in terms of the American Bar Association standing up for justices, and that whole confirmation process now is so fiery. But in the 2000s, was the temperature in the Senate Judiciary Committee anywhere close to where it is now?
No, it's not near as personal. Now, Clarence Thomas went through a brutal hearing, and they were, just all sorts of sexual innuendo crap. That's really belittling of the process. That backfired on the Alito hearing. So we're in the final day of the hearing, and if he doesn't make a major blunder, he's going to clear through. He's set. So the Democrats, they throw the haymaker. They just throw everything, and they start attacking him personally. And I don't remember what it was they were accusing him of, but here's an honorable man that's lived an honorable life, and an intellectual, really. I'd say John Roberts might be the student body president, but Sam Alito would have been the chess club president. He just kind of a intellectual, can be not awkward socially, but he's not a proficient socially. So they're going for the haymakers now and accusing him of all sorts of personal things. Well, his wife is sitting right behind him in the hearing, and she starts to cry because her husband's just being so attacked, and she knows the character of this man, and this is a good man. And it was that moment when she starts to cry that Lindsey Graham pops up and said, I hope you guys are happy with yourself now. You make his wife cry off of these spurless attacks that he does not deserve, and just berates and scolds him. And it was at a moment in time in history where that actually worked. And they backed up and they said, yeah, let him through. And he ends up on the court.
And history was made.
It's a beautiful, poignant moment back when we were more civilized.
Wow. Great story. We're so glad you shared that with us. And We would love to have you back on again, since we've barely scratched the surface of the history you've personally been a part of. And we know our listeners will want to hear the stories of your time as governor and as ambassador for religious freedom. There's so much more we can cover, so I hope that's a yes.
Oh, yeah, I'd be happy. I love you guys, and you guys were so central, the KFL and all of the people that are a part of it in my elections. I'm not in the U.S. Senate without you guys. And the governorship, 17 bills I signed, that happens with KFL backing and support, and 21,000 fewer abortions in that 7-year period that I'm governor than the prior 7 years. I mean, that saved lives, and you guys were central to all of that. So God bless you, and yes, I'll be back on.
Excellent. We're so glad. We will take that one to the bank. So on behalf of Peter and I and all the supporters of Kansans for Life, thank you for all of your work, Ambassador Brownback, and for joining us today and sharing all these stories of the history. We all want to know this, and we can't afford to forget it. It's very important. And as we've titled our podcast On the Right Side of History with Kansans for Life, to talk about the past, present, and future. All these things tie together. There are these common threads that we can't forget the past. We have to remember our history and, where those successes came, so that we can, see more successes in the future. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. And it's not just Kansas. While I was ambassador, I had legislators from Kenya and Uganda tell me that, well, while you were governor, we were tracking your pro-life legislation to see about things that we might use and implement here. It has an impact around the world.
Love it.
Wow. Well, Ambassador, thank you for being on the right side of history, and thank you so much for joining us here today, and we look forward to hopefully talking with you in the not-too-distant future.
I look forward to it. God bless you all. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.
And to our listeners, thanks for listening today. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button on the platform you're using so that you'll be notified of future episodes. Share this episode with a friend. So many great stories. We know they're going to want to hear it. So make sure you share it. Also, we love to hear from listeners. So leave a review or send us an email at kfl@kfl.org. You can follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok at Kansans for Life. So until next time, never forget, the pro-life movement is on the right side of history. Truth always wins in the end. Thanks, friends. We'll see you soon.